welcome to our very first Electronic Cafe interview edition of 2025. Mark and I just spent an hour talking to the fabulous Keanan Duffty, one part of the amazing Slinky Vagabond, whose new album is out next week. Mark, what a top guy.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, he's a British guy who succeeded in fashion, went to New York, succeeded in fashion even more, started producing brilliant music with lots of collaborations of all the artists that we love, you know, the Dave Ures, the Midge Ures, the Clem Burkes, the Mike Garsons, Earl Slick. It's just, you know, the guy is just a real music man and a real fashion man, and it was just such a great pleasure to speak to him. You know, fashion and music does collide. He excels in both fields, and it was a real insightful chat and a pleasure to speak to him.
Yeah, and look, guys, you know, this album is worth checking out. This is one of the reasons we talked to Keanan. Mark and I loved the conversation, and just to say, not only incredibly successful, but just a really nice, down-to-earth guy. So enjoy our chat with the fantastic Keanan Duffty.
So, when we decided to do this, I mean, it's probably the most bonkers thing we ever did, because we're really busy through our day jobs. We literally went onto Amazon and we bought microphones and cameras, and that literally within 15 minutes. And then the realization when we did our first like episode, we was just like thinking, oh god, shit, you know, who wants to listen to us two just rambling
that craft work and what albums we bought that week. Hey everyone, welcome to our very first Electronic Cafe interview of 2025. We are absolutely delighted to be chatting to someone who's not only just an amazing musician, but also an incredibly talented fashion designer. He's one half of the amazing Slinky Vagabond, the amazing Keanan Duffty. Great to finally get you on the Electronic Cafe, my friend. It's so nice to see you.
Brilliant to be here. Thank you both for having me on. You know, Mark, Andy, it's great. I was going to call you Del. What was that name you said before? Randolph. Yeah, now it's in my head. Randolph. You know, thanks to both of you. I love what you do, and it's an honour to be involved.
We love what you do, and this. Wow. I mean, you know, we've both been fortunate to hear a copy. You must be really pleased how this turned out. I mean, it is a fantastic album.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we obviously. Fabio's my music and songwriting, and a big part of why this project kind of came into being, actually. We love this record. We think it's more cohesive than we did an album 4 years ago. And that was done very ad hoc. And, you know, we kind of both had bits of ideas and threw them together. With this, we've kind of worked on it more as a unit. And I had some definite asks of players that I wanted to get involved, you know, and that came to fruition. That was really fantastic. And then some new people that I met along the way. So it's been a labor of love. And we finally got to work with our good friend, Kevin Grady, who did the album design and the graphics. And he's actually an artist himself. He has a brilliant electronic music act called Black Plastic, and he's based out of California. You know, so it kind of all came together on this, I think. It's a nice one.
Here's the thing. What I want to talk about is a bit later on with Mark, but because of your connections. But when we started to sort of deep dive in your career, we were both like, whoa, you know, you've got this whole fashion side as well as your music. I'd like to just talk about your career in fashion, Brit. I mean, how did that all kick off for you? I mean, I know I read you're obviously a very young guy and ended up in St. Martin. How did that all happen?
Well, I grew up in Doncaster, and as a kid, I was really into music, and I was really into all the glam rock stuff, and you know, all the Sweet and Mark Bolan and a bit of Bowie. I didn't really get Bowie until a bit later. But I always loved what musicians wore, and kind of felt like they'd been beamed down from another planet, and even like musicians like LaBelle, for example, Nona Hendrix and Patti LaBelle, they had these space age outfits and they looked fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't just glam rock music that I was into, but I just loved the way musicians looked to wear those clothes actually more than anything else. So there was a big incentive to emulate that style. And, so when punk came along, that was like the doors were kicked down and basically you didn't have to learn the technique. You just could do it. So cut my flares down the side and put duct tape on them and then, make them into drain pipe pants, then go out and they'd fall apart. And I was like, oh, why did that happen? So I realized I had to learn to sew. So that was kind of running side by side with playing the guitar and playing in, punk band and all of that.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of it, really. They were magical. And, even bands like Sparks, for example, who kind of the precursor to a lot of things, whether it's whether it's Soft Cell and the Synthpop duo, or whether it's like the Darkness, Justin Hawkins, amazing falsetto. I mean, you totally hear Russell Land in that. So those artists in the early 70s, they were so experimental, and I thought that was amazing in retrospect as well, because they were all on major labels. They were getting away with a lot of great stuff. It was a fabulous time. And I think that really influenced all the punk scene as well.
Sometimes when it gets late, I celebrate and change my fate. All the thoughts inside your head, all the things you should say, all the echoes in your mind. If you seek, you'll surely find.
I mean, I saw that you graduate with a Bachelor of Arts and first class honours, and then you're in the Face magazine. I remember all these magazines. This is what I was reading about. It was like Tick Box, like an ID mag, and they kind of said you were one of the most important people of the 80s, which is quite an accolade, right?
They did a photo shoot. Nick Knight did portraits, and I've been trying to get my portrait from Nick ever since, but he keeps saying, well, you got the mag, that's fine. But I was next to John Peel and next to Rusty, kind of with two of the the most significant figures around that time, because everybody listened to Peel, and then Rusty changed the face of club culture. So and I'd loved Rusty, and the Rich Kids for me were the kind of connecting of the dots between punk and what came next in a way. So I just went to St. Martin's. Really, I applied because I wanted to get to London, because it seemed like that was where it was happening. So that was really the motivation, and then I kind of fell into this fashion thing, and I made a living from it.
When you went to St. Martin's, I mean, obviously the School of Art is a very famous School of Art. I mean, a lot of alumni come from that. Was you there at any time with Jarvis Cocker went there? I think Jeff Banks went there. I mean, a few notable people went there. Was you there at any period that they were?
There was this guy, John. I don't know what happened to him. But
John Galliano.
John Galliano. And John was Sade had just graduated right before Dylan Jones just graduated right before I started. Dylan was always around because he was working with ID at the time, and I did a lot of stuff with ID in the early 80s. So I've known Dylan since probably 1982 or 83. And there were a lot of other designers that are currently, there's an exhibition at the moment in the Fashion and Textile Museum, which is Zandra Rhodes Museum in Bermondsey, and it's called Outlaws, and it's like the renegades of London fashion, and it's Pam Hogg, John Crancher, Lee Bowery, all those people that were part of that club scene. And so, a lot of those people, some of them were at St. Martin's, and some of them I just knew through my kind of clubland adventures. It was just a kind of interesting time. There's an amazing contemporary artist called Peter Doig who was studying at St. Martin's at the same time that I was there. And we used to have this great coffee bar, which had a Space Invaders machine that everybody used to fight to get onto. But I remember when Jerry Dammers was setting up one of a show that he did. I forget which one it was. It might have been the Nelson. I don't know if it was the Nelson Mandela show, because I think that was after I graduated. But he was using the coffee bar as his office, and so was Holly Johnson. Holly Johnson was in there a lot. even after Frankie hit, he would still come in because he had a very good friend who was studying film at St. Martin's as well. So it was like a, kind of part of boiling away of all of these creative people, and everybody thought they were going to be famous, which is kind of, that naivety of youth is great. It's very infectious. So
what made you sort of, after all that success and what you did, you relocated to New York? When did that happen?
So I moved here in 93. I've been here for 32 years now, and I came here originally thinking I would just be here for a couple of years, just to experience, being in another place.
Yeah.
And I came here kind of illegally. I came here on a tourist visa, intending to stay. And I got a bit of freelance work. You can't do this now, but I got a bit of freelance work, and then eventually found a job, somebody to sponsor me, and I got a working visa to be here. And then time went by. It's 32 years later. So
A master of disguise, shadow in the nighttime. He's witnessed things that you can't surmise. Away to the stars. All these moments are lost in time.
So when you went to New York, did you have like your designer hat on, or was you intending to go into music, or?
totally fashion design. I mean, I came here, and my resume, so to speak, that I could get a regular job from was fashion. So I came here intending to find a fashion job. But, I started doing music. I kind of landed here, and about a year later, Logic Audio came out. And so suddenly you could like build a little studio in your house, which is great. And I got a computer, and I got Logic Audio, and tried to learn how to do that. These things have always been going simultaneously. It's always, music's such a precarious world to be in, and you can keep making music, but supporting yourself doing it can be really challenging.
Oh, you're right, mate. Talk to so many artists there. Yeah, it is tough. And I think what you've highlighted is that as you quite rightly said, it wasn't just the music. You kind of realise that the fashion and the music go hand in hand, which is what you love all of, which is why you're doing both so well. Mr. Bowie, you designed a clothing range with him for was it for Target stores in US?
Yeah. So
how did that happen?
Well, I'd been working for a company that was supplying Target with, designs, whatever. I got an opportunity to take my own collection. I had a collection in my name in the US. It was sold in the UK as well, in Japan. And it got a lot of exposure because I was doing collaborations with people like Reebok and Dr. Martens and other shoe companies. And so I was offered this chance to take it to Target. And it's kind of like I'd been on an indie label for many years, so to speak, in fashion. And then suddenly I got a chance to go with one of the majors, which was Target. The volume's big, the distribution's big, all of that. And so I jumped at it, and we launched that in 200 stores, which is, like a test order in 200 stores. And then we were taking it to sort of more stores, and I wanted to find a way to get kind of maximum impact with it. And I thought the way to do that is to work with somebody who's got a global, household name. And I'd had some interaction with David's management before about doing merchandise for the tours, and David had stopped touring by that point. But I went back to them and said, I'd love to pitch this idea to David. And they said, well, come up to the management offices, which were up on 57th Street, and meet David, and talk to him about it. And so that's kind of how it came about, was that initial meeting. It was very interesting because he sort of turned up as David Jones. He didn't turn up, and very famous people have that great skill of disarming you're in awe of them, but they disarm that by being completely normal. Like, this is just a normal situation. And I think David was very good at doing both. He could be the superstar, but he could also be this down-to-earth guy. Yeah, so we had that initial meeting, and then it was fascinating.
What was it you designed within the range? Was it like a t-shirt range, or?
It was a full range. Initially, we designed 3 groups. We did one that was kind of it was based on a hunky dory. It was kind of vintage, We did another that was sort of sportswear influenced, that was sort of Let's Dance. And then we did a third that was Man Who Fell to Earth, Station to Station. And that's what the target wanted.
Clothes always fit ya. Life is the pop of the cherry. When you're a boy, when you're a boy, you can wear a uniform. When you're a boy, other boys check you out. You get a girl. When you're a boy.
I flew out to Minneapolis, which is where they were based.
Yeah.
After David kind of greenlit the idea. And I didn't take any clothes or designs with me because we didn't have anything. I took the albums, all of David's albums, and a little plastic Japanese record player. And I went into the meeting with all of their team and, you know, their heads of merchandising and so on. And I said, I want to bring a globally known name to Target. And I put on Let's Dance because that's the track they would all know, of course, the massive hit. Started laying the albums down one by one on the table. And as I got to, like, you know, I don't know, but maybe it was Man Who Sold the World or, you know, Hunky Dory, or the third or fourth album, they were like, Bowie, oh my God, wow, you know. And then they said, can you do this again? We want to go and get the president of Target and like present this to him again. But that was basically the green light. And so then I went back to David and said, okay, you know, they said yes. And we started sort of in earnest designing the whole thing. And so we did, you know, to your question, Mark, we did a tuxedo, we did button-up shirts, we did a beautiful trench coat, and they're all kind of based on items that were similar to things that David had worn. But it wasn't like a merchandise collection. We didn't really do Bowie T-shirts because they're already out there. So there was kind of no point. We did one T-shirt with a lightning bolt that was done in a kind of distressed fabric that was stitched onto the shirt. But that was the only T-shirt. Everything else was kind of, you know, sort of dressed up stuff.
I mean, that was the reason I asked, because you said that Bowie wasn't touring at the time. So, I mean, otherwise it would have just been a replica, something or another T-shirt. Yeah, me and Andy go to a lot of shows and stuff, and my big grudge, I moan every time we go to a gig that how lazy the T-shirts are anyway. You know, you very rarely get a really cool tour T-shirt.
You make a really good point, and that's something that a lot of artists are sort of handing over their merchandising to be dealt with by companies like, you know, Norman Perry, Periscope, or Bravado, and they're a machine, and they do it well, but it's very generic. It's very difficult to do something that is kind of special, but it doesn't take a lot, actually. You know, it's something that you could. With a bit more energy and effort and thought, you could create a product that's more elevated. So, you know, maybe, I mean, that's something that I've always been really interested in is the merchandising of product around the music industry. You know, it's something that I actually want to teach. I work with the University of Southern California, Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre's Academy, and it's something that I'd love to teach there, because I think if you gave that to that generation, they would be going out into the world with you know, planting a seed, and they'd be kind of looking at, okay, you know, whether they're interested in dance music or hip hop or rock and roll or whatever, electronic music. You know, you plant the seed, and they're the ones that could probably activate it.
The last good tour T-shirt I had was a Sex Pistols one, and I know we'll go on to it in a second, but I know you design stuff also for the Sex Pistols, but it was a copy of like the Seditionary kind of linen T-shirt, which was inside out with the stitching on the outside with the Union. Well, that picture behind me there.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, when I started out, my company was branded as Slinky Vagabond, and I ended up changing it into my name I won't go into it, but I ended up changing it into my name. But I had all of these T-shirts that had Slinky Vagabond printed on them. And after 9/11 happened, we were kind of thrown into like a total mess of trying to dig ourselves out of cancelled orders and all this kind of stuff. And I had these boxes of T-shirts in the loft space that I was working out of. You know, I was kind of wringing my hands like, what do I do? You know, I don't have the money to create a new collection. And but I have to create something new. And my wife said, why didn't you use all of those T-shirts that we didn't sell that are in those boxes? So I got them out, and of course they had the name printed on the front. And I was like, okay, what do? I'll turn them inside out. and I turned them inside out, printed on what wasn't the inside, but now is the outside, with to your point, all of the marrow stitching and everything showing, and then over dyed them. And then I took them back to my sales showroom, and they were like, "Oh, great, reversible T-shirts! This is fantastic," So, and they sold really well. Kind of an accidental discovery, if you like, and that's to the point you're making. That's what you could do with a lot of this tour merchandise if you just think about it a little more, rather than just a boxy fit T-shirt, and do something a little more special.
Is there somebody watching me? Is there somebody there? Scanning me microscopically with 1,000-yard stare.
What was it you designed for the Sex Pistols?
I did a load of clothes, and I don't know. I to this day I don't really know how this happened, but we were in our design studio, and it was the end of the day, and the phone rang, and my wife answered it, and she said, "Oh, it's one of your stupid mates pretending to be Johnny Rotten." And I was like, "Okay," and I picked up the phone, and I heard this hello. We know that voice, and it was John, and he was sort of like, "What's all this about these clothes then?" Because I'd been doing clothes that were very Seditionaries influenced, they're very much kind of a punk thing, and he was just sort of interested. And the Pistols were about to do a tour, and I said, "Look, why don't I just send you a box of stuff, and you can have a look and see what you think." So I sent him a box of stuff, and then we spoke a couple of days later. And he liked it, and he said, "Oh, here, give Steve Jones a call." And so he gave me Steve's number, and I called Steve. And so I spoke to Steve about it, and Steve said, "Oh yeah, that sounds interesting. Send me a bunch of clothes," which I did, which years later I found pictures of him on eBay selling them. So perfect for Steve. That's kind of how it happened. And then, I sent stuff to London for Glen, and then they did a tour, and we did a party for them at the Chelsea Hotel in New York as a kind of, to sort of celebrate the New York show. And that was it. But I became very friendly with Steve, and I was on his radio show a few times. And then I became very, very friendly with Glen to this day. So it was just kind of one of those serendipitous things. Glenn describes it as, "Oh, just sent us a bunch of clothes," which is kind of like, it's true, really. I mean, I didn't sort of style them or anything. I just kind of I didn't give Cookie anything because I didn't have his contact information. And, I sort of, no disrespect to Cookie, I didn't get in contact with him. But yeah, the rest of the band wore it on the tour, and, I was very happy. And then Steve and Cookie actually came to my studio when they were in New York, and I did a pair of pants for Steve, like as he was, bespoke as he was waiting.
I've got a funny story with Paul Cook. I went and saw Chiefs of Relief did a benefit show for Matthew Ashman, and Paul Cook was obviously on drums. And then me and a friend of mine got there early, went for a coffee in Starbucks, and Paul Cook was in there with some guy. So I said to a friend of ours, "Paul Cook's over there," and he went, "No, he's not." I went, "He is. He's over there." So we got our coffees and we sauntered over, and I said, "Look, it's a bit shit, but do you mind having a photo? Can we have a photo with you?" And he went, "What, of me?" And I just thought, "You're a Sex Pistol? Yeah, of course it's you." He was so funny and down to earth. He's like, "What, me?" He's like,
"Who was all that for?"
Sing with devotion in the skies, cradle and emotion in your eyes. Ride on roads I'd rather crawl outside. Freeze to run away, revenge or revel.
Your good friend Fabio Fabbri, who's the half in this amazing picture. How did you guys meet?
So I was teaching a class at a school in Florence in Italy, and they invited me to come and do a lecture for about 120 students. And I said to them, do you mind if I bring a friend with me? And we can kind of do a sort of mutual lecture, if you like. And what we wanted to talk about was working in shops, because I did that. I worked in the shop PX, which when I was in college, which is where Steve Strange and Princess.
I remember PX.
So and the great thing about that for me was, networking again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, meeting all of these amazing people that would come in. And also understanding who your customer is. And Glen worked for Vivian when he was still at St. Martin's, and he put up that sex sign outside the store, and he printed a lot of the T-shirts in St. Martin's. So the idea was we would tell both of those stories. And we did the lecture, and students, I kind of really interviewed Glen. And students were really, they were sort of sitting on the edge of their seats because Sex Pistols kind of thing. And then afterwards, this guy came up to us, and I think he was trying to kind of talk to Glen, but Glen was sort of mobbed with students. And he said to me, I've got a recording studio, and I'd love to get together, and if you want to come and jam. And I'm not really like a jamming kind of person, but he was a really nice guy. And I said, look, let's stay in touch. And I'll come, I'll come and see you. And so that kicked off a friendship. And I went to his studio, and he played me some tracks that he'd recorded that were instrumentals. And he said, do you fancy having a go at putting a top line and lyrics on them? And I said, yeah, I'll have a go with those too. And that's how we started. And I was going to Florence fairly regularly to do this class. So each time I was there, I'd go up to Fabio's studio for an hour, and, we'd do a bit of work. And by the time the pandemic hit, we had about 20 songs. It was like, what do we do with these? And so we kind of thought, my thinking was, why don't we get some guests to play on them? Because it will add a different element to it. And, it's great for marketing as well. Those bold-faced names, people will pay attention. And there were a couple of tracks that were I thought very Rich Kids-ish. So I contacted Midge, and I said, look, would you mind having a go at putting guitar on them? And he was like, yeah, sure, send me the files and I'll do it. And that was how it started. And then everyone else, just came from there, really.
Crash all day and burn at night time. Close your eyes, it's day for night time. Too young to live and much too fast to die. Prima donna, we were hung on you. Prima donna, you were black and blue. And then the glass.
On that first album, you got Midge and Dave Formula, but on the new album, Glen Matlock, got Earl Slick, you got Mike Garson. The list goes on.
It's funny because you mentioned Dave Formula. So when Magazine reformed, they were managed by my friend Graham Oxby, who I went to school with, and he's a really talented photographer, and he became their manager, and he's very, very close to many of the guys in that band, and he's extremely close to Dave Formula. So I asked my friend Graham, do you think Dave might be interested in, putting some keys on this track? And Dave said, yeah. So we sent him the track, and that was great. Again, it's that kind of, some of it is real connections. Either Midge I'd known for probably about, 15 years, maybe. I interviewed him way back. And he and I obviously both, are friends with Glen. So that was kind of an obvious one. And that's kind of the way those connections have really happened.
The interesting thing as well is that on the albums and the names you've got on the album, take the Midge one, for example. It doesn't sound like a Midge Ure track. It doesn't sound like the Midge has been brought in to produce a track that sounds like a Midge Ure track. It's like a Rich Kids sounding. It's like a new wavy sounding track.
I've always loved his guitar playing because to me, he plays like a little bit behind the beat, and it's very distinctive. I love that. It's kind of holding it back a little bit. And I don't think, I don't think Midge is credited enough actually for it. He's obviously always credited for his guitar playing, and all these amazing things that he's achieved with Live Aid and so on, and the massive success with that version of Ultra Rocks. But he's an amazing guitar player. that was something that I kind of felt would work with this. With this project, Fabio is much more of a rock guy, and I'm 1 foot in electronic and 1 foot in kind of the new, the sort of new wave side of guitar music. And, that's what we tried to achieve. I mean, the one rock and roll guy we have on our first record is Martin Turner, who was one of the founders of Wishbone Ash. And the reason why Martin's on there is because he produced an 80s record that I did that was very kind of high energy electronic dance music. And I just wanted to work with Martin again because we've been mates for 40 years, I guess. So, that was an opportunity to have him on something. There's a lot of synchronicity in it, but there's also these friendships that go back. And then people that I've met more recently, like Ava Cherry, I did a gig with her the summer before last in New York, and we kind of hit it off. And so I asked her if she would sing on a track, and she was very kind and did.
I think that also validates the quality of your music, though, mate, because these are all big names, and they've gone, we love you as a person, but actually your music's so good, I want to be involved. I think it's fantastic. For the people who haven't heard this album, check it out. It's bloody amazing.
The thing, Fabio's is an excellent guitar player.
Yeah,
he's a great producer. And he's one of the best vocal producers that one of the best guys in the studio to work with as a vocalist, because he draws it out of you. I work with Earl Slick a lot, and Slicky's a great producer as well. And Slicky's kind of production technique with vocals is like, he always calls me KD, and he's like, hey, KD, do it again, but do it more Cockney. But I think Fabio's very sort of nurturing in a way, and a real talent. I mean, an amazing musical talent.
He's rock and roll. She's dressed in fine and so sharp, and every night's another Saturday night. Hey, I want you to let me in. I want to touch your skin.
Any live dates to promote this or get on the road? Because we'd love to see you.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have a gig in New York on the 19th. But as a band, we have friends in New York who are a band called the Ritualists, and the leader of that band's a guy called Christian Dryden, and he actually is a multi-instrumentalist. The Ritualists are kind of they're sort of like in the kind of mode of someone like Suede, for example, and a great band. Their first record was produced by Ed Buller, and their second record was produced by a guy called Mario McNulty, who did a lot of work with Bowie and Tony Visconti. And they very kindly said that we could use their rhythm section and keys if we do a tour in the US. And so the idea would be probably either in the summer or the fall to do a small East Coast tour with them, and then we'll support them. We'll use their rhythm section, and then obviously they'll be the lead band. And I think that's a good solution. And then I was in London in November, and I was thinking about venues like the 100 Club, for example, and other venues like that where we could do maybe a sort of London centric. 3 or 4 gigs over a 5-day or 1 week period. We have to find bass, drums and keys to do that. So that's something we kind of have to figure out, because I want to do it as a full band. Don't really want to. We could do acoustic stuff, but it's going to sound great as a band.
I mean, your music, Keanan, as well. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the music you release under your own name, the covers and everything, you can tell. You can tell from the covers you do. I mean, there's Ghost by Japan. I mean, there's Spandau Ballet one. There's Joy Division ones. We can see the tracks you love, the bands you love, same bands as I love. Whereas the Slinky Vagabond stuff is more. It is, like you say, more cohesive. It's more. It's the original material. It's the one that feels like it feels like a band. And I think this album, which is released on the 14th of January,
that's correct. Yeah.
I think it's a really great piece of work, and for people to want to get hold of it, where's the best place for them to get it?
So if you could go to our website, it's slinkyvagabond.net, and the vinyl, the CD are available there. the previous album is also available, and there's bundles available too. I'm putting up on my own website actually for the US, because it now with Brexit and with other issues, it's complicated shipping stuff from Europe to America and so on. And I don't know what's going to happen with all this tariff stuff as well. So I'm actually going to put an addition to my own website, which will be like a web shop for that, and for a couple of other things that I do as well. And so we have a Bandcamp too for Slinky Vagabond. So it's through any of those, formats you can buy it. The stuff that's going to be available in Europe is going to be shipping from Italy. So it's it's kind of an easy shipment.
Any new bands you're loving right now that our viewers might want to know about?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I did mention Black Plastic, obviously. Yes. On the sort of rock and roll side, I love Amyl and the Sniffers. They're not necessarily a new band, but she's got such an amazing on-stage energy. The funny thing is, I was watching this show with my wife called Never Have I Ever. Well, I don't know if I'm sure it's streamed. It's on Netflix. So, and it's about this Southeast Asian teenage girl in LA. And her voiceover throughout the whole show is done by John McEnroe. So it's hilarious. It's hilarious, and he does it like he's a tennis commentator. But whoever does the music programming for that show is incredible. They had this band Cannons, who had this track called "Fire for You," which is kind of an 80s electronic sound. There's another great band called Celebrities with an S, S-E-L. They're a Brooklyn band, love them, and they have tracks on that show as well. So in particular, they're artists that I thought were really good, and they're very 80s pop sensibility, but with the pad keys and the bit of Swain and Jolly production certainly on the Cannons track. They're pop. I mean, they're definitely pop, but I love the music on that show. It just works. Yeah. The show's very humorous.
There's a lot of great bands coming out of the US, particularly in New York at the moment. Mark Martin told me about. There's a band called Gift. I don't know if you know those guys, but no. Check them out. They're in your city. Mark can tell you more. I mean, Mark, 2 albums, right?
The last one, Illuminator, came out just at the end of last year. It was really great. I mean, touching on New York. I mean, we've spoken to people like East Coast and West Coast, and I've always favoured like the Brooklyn sound and the East Coast. I mean, Blondie and Talking Heads and just all, the bands that come out of the East Coast. I mean, and you've worked with Clem Burke as well, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, Clem. So Clem, Earl Slick, and I had a version of Slinky Vagabond in 2007. And we recorded an album. It's a few of the tracks were put out on a compilation that I did, but the album's not actually been released. I'd love to get it out one day soon. But yeah, I mean, we've been friends. We've remained friends ever since. And what happened is that we had that band. We went out. We supported the New York Dolls. That was our kind of sort of first gig, actually. We played at Fashion Week. We did all these great shows, and we went and did a couple of recording sessions in the studio upstate in Rhinebeck. And then, of course, the Pistols were going to do, a Nevermind the Bollocks sort of anniversary because it's 2007. So that started, and then Blondie started doing all the festivals again in earnest, and they've never really stopped. I mean, they've since the mid 2000s they've been on the road, regularly. So that version of Slinky Vagabond kind of drifted apart, but and so it's great that meeting with Fabio, we were kind of able to sort of regroup some of this stuff. I hadn't been on stage for quite a few years, and this was at Irving Plaza, which is about 1,500 people, and it was a Joe Ramone. It was a fundraiser. It was a Joe Ramone birthday thing, and that happens every year. And we only had about 6 songs, so I think we had to play them all twice. Going on stage and seeing, thankfully I wasn't wearing my glasses, so I could only see the first couple of rows. And but it was exhilarating. One side there's Slicky, who's like Mr. Rock and Roll. On the other side there's Glen, and they're both sort of going, yeah, go on, lad, go on. So it's great.
It was the fanboy in me. I had to ask about Clem Burke because I'm a massive Blondie fan. I love Blondie, and I've seen Blondie so many times, and Clem Burke, you can't stop looking at him when he plays live. Just the way he drums, he's so animated, and he's just such a brilliant drummer.
My wife and I moved to San Francisco in 2012. We lived there for 3 years, and we had my mum and dad came to stay with us for 3 months. And Blondie were playing in this winery, the Mountain Winery, which is kind of about an hour and a half from San Francisco. And so I messaged Clem and I said, we're going to come to the show. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll put you on the list. Come backstage. And I said, I'm bringing my mum and dad. And he was like, oh, great. Okay. And I said, yeah, they're not so mobile. And he was like, don't worry. When you get to the parking lot, you just tell the security there, I'll send a golf cart down. They'll pick you up. And they'll take you up to the venue because it was kind of an uphill venue. Yeah. And I'm thinking, this is not going to happen. So we get to the parking lot, park my car, my mum and dad get out, the security guy comes over. I said, I'm Mr. Duffty, I'm coming to see Blondie. And Clem said, oh yeah, no problem. Here's the golf cart. And we go to the venue and we go backstage. And my mum's going, where's Blondie? Where's Blondie? Meaning Debbie, of course. Yeah, of course. And Clem comes ambling over, and and he's saying to my mum and dad, "Oh, come over. There's craft services. Get a sandwich and something to eat, and have a drink and stuff." It was delightful, and then we went out and saw the show. And my mum, she's got like a broad Yorkshire accent. She kept turning to me and saying, "Oh, he's got arms like an octopus." He's like doing his full-on sort of Keanan Muppet.
Brilliant. Love that.
So great. I've got a great picture of my mum and dad with Clem backstage with their Axis All Areas passes on.
Oh, how sweet. Man, that's an amazing story. Question we ask every guest, and apologies if you hate it, but Desert Island Disc, mate.
One song
or one album?
It would be probably Joy Division Closer.
Wow, great shout.
Because of tracks like The Eternal, which is kind of has that slow and moody, and then other tracks that are more upbeat, Isolation. The sort of, I love that fade out, fade in on Isolation. That was so great.
Amazing.
It's a Peter Saville cover. I mean, it was funny. I went to see the Human League in 1980 and in Sheffield at the top rank. And I was in school, but I bunked off school and went during the day. And Phil Oakey let me into the venue and they were sound checking. And this had happened a couple of days earlier, but pre-internet, news travels slowly. And this journalist called Charles Shaw Murray came into the venue and he came over to Phil. And I was like talking to Phil. And Charles Shaw Murray said, Ian Curtis died. And that was kind of like one of those seminal moments in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, Ian Curtis was a total hero, of mine. And I just love what Joy Division did in that brief period. Yeah, I was fortunate. I did see Joy Division at the Futurama Festival in Leeds. And he was doing all, he was fully formed. And that was 79. So it was pre-Closer coming out.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they were doing songs from Closer at that point.
Yeah.
And, they were fully formed. I mean, Hooky was doing his low bass thing and, it was just amazing. And you were kind of like, that was kind of the future because it was the energy of rock, but also the kind of krautrock thing as well. It's a brilliant sort of meeting point.
I went to a playback with Peter Hook for Unknown Pleasures. And he admitted, he said that when they heard the album, they hated it because it wasn't a representation of what it sounded like live. He said, but I've also got to give kudos that it future-proofed it, and it turned it into the album that it is today, because they were more of a punky band.
Yeah.
With a raw sound, and you know, Closer and Unknown Pleasures are quite polished and everything, and they didn't like it. But I mean, they're both fantastic albums.
It's timeless as well. That sound is timeless. I think it's and it's that ethereal aspect is what Martin Hannett probably brought to it.
That's a great shout. I probably would have guessed it after 5 or 6 guesses with you. Some were so far out there. We always think what the interview we think we might guess what the album's going to be, and we've never got it right.
Well, you did a great cover of an Adele song, so I was.
I do. I love my pop music. Actually, there's a video that came out yesterday for the new single, which I forgot to mention. Cult with No Name have done a remix.
Yeah, we've got it. It's great.
It's not a remix. It's like the Cult with No Name version. It's my vocal, but I absolutely love it because it kind of I get my electronic music passion fulfilled through that. I get to sing with Cult with No Name, which is fantastic. I thought Eric put a bit of vocal on it as well. So, but
it's brilliant. It's the Icarus Falls song, isn't it? And I was playing it earlier, and we was out with Cult with No Name last night, and because Johnny plays on it, like the piano and everything, and I was going to ask you whether you answered it there, and you turned around and said it's actually a Cult with No Name version of it with your vocals on top, but. But you know, you could hear Johnny playing on it, and you could hear it. It's definitely like Cult with No Name.
I mean, they asked me, "What do you want?" And I said, "Do whatever you want," and that's what they did, and I love it.
Astro boys and starry girls, glittering shudder, hazy world. Where did it all go wrong? Flying up to the sun, destiny calls, Icarus falls.
And Black Plastic actually did a version of our song "Old Boy," which originally I wanted to use that as the name of the band, the Old Boys, but it didn't really click with Fabio. He was like, "What?" So what I like to do is to get electronic music collaborators to do mixes of our stuff. And I did a record back in the 80s called Water Sport that was actually Record of the Week in Smash Hits. So kind of very, very
Was
proud
that
of
the Neil Tennant Smash Hits, was it?
It was. So Neil was already in Pet Shop Boys at that point. But it was, I forget the name of the journalist. They did it like a really, the track is very kind of Dead or Alive. And she basically, the journalist referenced that. She said, "Oh, it's better than Dead or Alive," which I don't know about that, but Cult with My Name are going to do a remix of that because I want to put that album out in the fall and do a vinyl version of it with a bunch of remixes. I did a Janice Long session as well around that time, and I've got all those tracks. So it would be great to kind of include that.
Mate, listen, absolute pleasure to meet you, buddy, at last. I know we've been talking, but honestly, absolute delight. When you're coming to London next, let us know. We'd love to buy you dinner or lunch. Seriously, really like to meet you face to face. And
absolutely,
this is coming over. And you know, for all our viewers out there, this is out in a couple of days' time, grab a copy. It's fantastic. We think it's an awesome piece of work, and you're rightly proud of it, mate. And we think it's awesome. So really loved you coming on today.
Thank you so much, and it's great to meet via the wonders of the interweb.
Yes,
but we'll meet in person.
Keanan, thanks very much, mate. It's a real thrill for us to speak to you. I mean, we love what you're doing. We love your whole aesthetic, really, like the fashion and the music and the pop fashion and everything. Absolutely great. And thanks for giving up your time today to.
Pleasure. Thank you. I love it. I mean, it's nice to be with so many iconic artists that you've covered. That I love their music, so it's really I really appreciate being part of that amazing group of creators, and both of you as well, because I know you're musicians as well as doing this, and I do know how much it takes to do this because I edit videos for my classes, so I do asynchronous lectures. And I know technologically what it takes to do that. So, hats off to you.
Thank you, mate. And when you're in London, seriously, dinner's on us. Cheers, buddy. Look after yourself.
Good day.
So-